going to roll right into it. Just so everyone knows the order today, we're going to go with Tyler on the top, then Niti, then Joe Liziness, who will be hopping in here, then Meme Investors, then David Bell, and then I'm going to close. We all have different experiences within this world. And just so everyone knows, we're going to have each speaker going for about 7 minutes, just so that there's time for transitions and intros and that type of stuff, and we can wrap up on time. And, if everyone likes this and we get some good feedback, I'm sure we can do more in the future. For myself, this is pretty much my full-time job running these type of things, and I love doing it. So without further ado, I am going to hand the mic over to Tyler to enlighten us and just talk to us about, what it is you do and what you would like to share with us about the topic.
Sure. And I'm happy to keep this super informal. I don't have a prepared speech or whatever, but we can bounce ideas off each other. And I'm happy to give everyone a bit of a background on what I do. And I have a lot of thoughts in the startup space. I'm a two-time founder. I was on the founding team of Lex, where I'm currently the director of product. We're building a really cool technology product right now in the consumer investing space. And yeah, I'm a big startup person. I love building from the ground up. I love thinking about things from a new angle and trying to attack problems in a creative way. I think right now is a great time to be involved in a startup. You have so many people changing the landscape of a lot of different environments. And I know, Wolf, what you guys are doing is really cool. I know, David, you're working at TradingView, I think is correct. We're trying to use TradingView and Lex. So I love integrating with startups. I love talking to people about their ideas. I'm advising startups. So if anyone's listening and has a cool startup idea, I would love DM me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. It's kind of what I like to do. So, but Wolf, do you have any questions or what's the
Yeah,
format
yeah,
here?
absolutely. So, Tyler, can you go into a little bit about your role within Lex and kind of being a part of this startup, which has come so far. You've IPO'd a building at this point. What were some of the, I guess, the early steps that you took and things that have kind of helped you along the way make your startup successful? Kind of what your role has been in that process.
Sure. I can take you from kind of the moment I kind of was introduced to Lex. I read an article about Lex in the Wall Street Journal about Lex offering equity slugs of commercial real estate assets to people for as little as $250. And I reached out to Jesse, who is a CTO. I just emailed him and I actually have a tweet. I don't know if you can pin that to the channel or if I can send it to you after, but about how to find a job at a startup. I used the exact template that I tweeted about to find a job at Lex by reaching out to Jesse. I said, hey, I'm super interested, would love to hop on a call. And 4 days later, I was starting at Lex, which is pretty cool. And, we're attacking a really interesting problem right now. We're IPOing buildings. And when people think of IPOs, traditionally, they think of standard equities, right? But right now, what we're doing is we're taking any building. I'm in New York City right now, and I'm looking at the Chrysler building outside my window. We hope to have anyone look out their window and point at a commercial real estate asset and be able to say, hey, I own that. And that problem is super different. It's super cool. And one thing that makes it really interesting and complex is we're allowing our customers to hold their commercial real estate assets in their brokerage accounts. So think public.com, think your Charles Schwab account, think your Fidelity account. So that's kind of the trajectory of where we're going. And we're taking a lot of old school finance. We're playing within the financial rails of kind of just the overall financial world. And we're also taking this new school approach that you see from Robinhood or Betterment or Acorns or Wealthfront and bringing that kind of sleek, very new school design, that new fintech feel to an old school financial rail. And that's kind of what we're doing. It's been a wild ride. But what else can I speak to? I could speak about this for the entire hour. So guide me if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah. I
of
know, I
the
know. I'm
most
gonna.
important thing.
Yeah. I think something which would be really interesting to hear about would be you're finally back in person with some people. You did the Lex meetup, people were around. What was it like during the pandemic, as you worked through that time period? And how did you remain on the proper course and trajectory? So many people are still now, they're working completely remote. I've been in my office one day, literally at my startup ever. And I'm just curious as to like what processes you put in place and how you were able to remain on that successful trajectory where you were able to, I'm not sure if you raised funding prior or during the pandemic, but just continuing to be a successful startup.
Sure. I'm a huge advocate for asynchronous work. We have really embodied that at Lex. What that really means is people are going to be online, right? There's no need to have it be synchronous where you're going back and forth. People will get to it when they can. And I think that's the culture that we're trying to build at Lex. I know, I'm not sure if Adam Singer's on here, but he's like the biggest advocate. He's been published in tons of huge mainstream media about the topic, and we're trying to embody that. And, I'm on the engineering side, and that's kind of the standard. And you've seen this in a lot of remote teams. But right now, I think our approach for moving forward is I think that there should be, at least in an engineering side, days where you have meetings, they should all be at home. You don't want two class of citizens. All companies are hiring people all over the globe and all over the map. I think that having some people on the team in person while maybe three or four are dialing in remotely, that creates two classes of citizens. You don't pick up on the nonverbal cues when some people are in the office and some are. So the approach that I think that we're moving forward with, at least at Lex, is when there's days where you're meeting with people, no one's there. And then on the other days, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for Lex, you can go in or you don't have to go in. And I think giving the people at the company the option there is really what we've at least seen at Lex as we scale. And we're at 30 employees now, but I think we'll probably be at closer to 100 by this time next year. So, and I think the key to success there is just listening to what people want. And if you listen to the people, you'll make the people happy. So, um,
Absolutely. So Tyler, I appreciate it. I wish I had, the full hour to go with you. I'm definitely going to bring you back on to some more spaces and pick your brain a lot. You're also an active trader, right? So there's a ton we can be talking about there. But appreciate you, sharing the base with us. I recommend everybody, go check out what Tyler and Adam, who's also in here as a listener, are working on with Lex. Fascinating company with exposure to some really unique areas.
Totally, and I'm happy to stay on and ask questions to the other speakers because I've
Yeah.
looked everyone up and and been following a lot of you guys for a while and I had tons of questions. So happy to stay on and help out.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Well, without further ado, we're going to roll right into Nitty. For those who aren't familiar, Nitty's been on a couple of my spaces. She's like, when I think entrepreneurship, I just think Nitty. Like, it's just goes hand in hand for me. She fires up my spaces, makes us want to run through brick walls. I think today is going to be more. She was talking with me about what she's prepared some stuff to say. So I won't take any words from her mouth, but I'm very excited to hear. Floor is yours, Nitty.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having me on again on one of your spaces. And so today I wanted to talk about organic media growth and how you can leverage that for whatever sort of business you're starting, or if you have a startup going. It's important you get on social media. And a lot of people don't know where to start. I see all these startups, I see them going about creating an Instagram page or a Twitter page and going about their social media strategy, and it just doesn't end up working. It just stays stagnant. So there are several platforms to choose from, and this is the reason why you need to be utilizing social media for your startup or business. And you'd be foolish not to take advantage because you can target any demographic you want and 10x, even 100x, not only your sales but your brand recognition. And everyone's on their phones now, everyone's on the computer, everyone's on the internet now. You guys know that. So it'd be so important to take advantage. So for example, why are we on this Twitter space? To spread knowledge, obtain value, and share what we got with the world, right? So ultimately, that should be enough to show you that we're showing up for ourselves, our own brands, and our own businesses to spread to other audiences. You should be doing the same for not only your business, your brand as a whole, right? So some practical advice now. If you have a team, if you run a business, startup, whatever, if you have a team, I think what would be the most important thing to do is have everyone on the team start a personal brand that's specific to what they do on the team. So if you have a social media manager, or if you have a graphic designer, or if you have someone who's in charge of the finances, whatever it is that they do, they start a personal brand on the platform you guys choose to do. I'll also talk about that in a little bit. But you guys also use that personal brand and those personal brands to leverage the company page, right? So I see a lot of company pages, but there's no face of the brand. So that's why it's important you guys branch out and have personal brands beside it. Now, if you don't have a team, build your personal brand through the roof and use it as a leverage to build brand recognition for your company page, or be your own company. For example, like Wolf Financial, right? The host of this Twitter space, he is his own company page. He's not showing his face, but yet he's still showing, he's in front and collaborating with everyone else as the company page. So there's a lot of things to learn from people who are already doing it. So go out and find those people, connect with those people, study their pages, replicate what works. Don't completely copy anyone, but replicate what works, because on social media, it all just comes down to the same principles when it comes to going viral, getting brand recognition, gaining followers, making sales, etc. Right? So it's really important. Or you can be on the opposite side of the spectrum, where I am, for example, where I am my own brand. I don't have a company page. It's just me. It's Niti Saran. That's who you're listening to. That's who you follow. That's it's just my brand. And whenever you hear my name, that's what I expect you guys to feel. The brand next to it is just my name. So, and besides all that, when it comes to the platforms itself, I suggest, like, if you have content to create and things like that, you hire a social media expert, graphic designer, like social media manager, something like that, and outsource it all, because it's really important to not get caught up in the small things like that. It can be very, very tedious. So now people are going to ask, what sort of platform should I get on? Right? Like, I don't like, so you have to first realize who you're targeting, the demographic, their pain points, where would they be hanging out? For example, if you're targeting an older demographic, like 40-year-old female entrepreneurs who need funding for their startup, right? I don't know. That's just an example. You might want to head to LinkedIn or Facebook, for example, right? So now I'll just get into the platforms that I heavily suggest. And they're on a more broader sense to build an omnipresence. And what I mean by omnipresence is to build authority on every platform you possibly can. Now, take it slow first, like one or two max at a time. Don't go building on 20 platforms at the same time. It's just not going to be efficient, but definitely put yourself out there and get on one or two platforms at a time. I do two platforms. I get on Instagram, Twitter. Those are my first two platforms. And slowly branch out into like podcasts, YouTube, whatever you feel and wherever you feel your target audience is at, right? So Instagram is an absolute must. Hire a social media manager to manage all your content, your hashtags, your captions, post daily, etc. It's very, very tedious work. You don't want to be the one that's on the back end of all that, right? Twitter, this, in my opinion, is the easiest platform to grow on. You can outsource like a ghostwriter and or social media manager to write and schedule all your tweets on a monthly basis for like, I'm sure people only charge like 1,500 for this. And if you get this right, your brand can go through the roof. And not only that, it'll pay back in terms of sales and all that sort of stuff. Podcasts, really easy way to leverage and even promote and market your company and products and services. Optimize and consistent weekly episodes. I myself have a top 10% global podcast, and I only got there because of my consistent uploads every single week since 2019. So because of that, I've been able to climb up the ladder. Right? YouTube. So you can record videos with your team or by yourself if you're solo, and extract the audio for podcasts, post the video on YouTube. I'm just throwing around some ideas because a lot of people find trouble in coming up with content. And all it comes down to, honestly, is being able to really break it down, macro content into micro content. And just some last pieces of advice, I would say collab with other creators and founders. They also work like this Twitter space right now, collabing with other people who do what they do. It'll allow me to branch out into other audiences as well, right? So you want to do that. But if I had to sum up how to gain thousands of followers who are willing to throw their money at you and, be in love with your brand and be very loyal to your brand, it would be this one sentence. And I'm going to end it here with this one sentence: provide insane amounts of value through shareable content. All right. If you can provide insane amounts of value through shareable content, people will share it, right? On Instagram, for example, you see people sharing posts to their Insta stories. You see people sharing links to YouTube videos and podcasts. You see people retweeting popular tweets. You need to be in that mix, and you will see your brand start to explode when it comes to your social media growth. So I hope that was able to clarify to anyone who's completely confused when it comes to organic growth and on social media. It's still possible on any platform, but that's what I had to say. And I hope anyone listening, you take advantage of social media and the sort of power it has when it comes to, if you don't even want to promote a product or service on social media, promote your email list and put that out there as well. But go for it.
Always, always killing the game, Nitty. Love that. That was some really good points there with specific targeting of social media, talking about the consistency needed for anybody that wants to check out Nitty's podcast. That's NS Audio, right, Nitty?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, check out. You can check out NS Audio by Niti on Spotify, where she's always bringing on consistent guests. Hopefully, I'll have you on my podcast soon for the consistency there. And 100% agree with everything you said. And then also, but she made some good points, right? You can get other people to come in and work for you, do this stuff. I actually had a podcast with a ghostwriter last week, JK Molina. There's people that will help you build your brand and also creating a personality. Incredibly important stuff. All right, I'm gonna keep the ball rolling just to make sure everybody gets enough time. If we have, some time at the end, we'll bring it in for more questions. But in the space, we have Joseph Liziness. Joe, a man of many accomplishments, author of Angel Investing with $100. You've been on my podcast. We've chatted. You're an early investor in so many startups, a veteran. Joe, would love to hear from you kind of your take on startups, entrepreneurship, this field which you're so heavily involved in. I see him up here as a speaker. I hope that his mic is working. Let's see if he was having some trouble beforehand. Oh, damn. He's connecting, reconnecting. Spaces is a trip. All right. While we have 1 minute waiting for Joe, Matt Esparza, you're up here. Anything that you wanted to add?
Honestly, I'm just here to listen right now. I'm working, but I did want to ask real quick, Tyler. You said that you started founded two startups. I actually had a question. So right now, we talked about that app that I'm building, but I'm running into the problem where there's more demand than I can fulfill because it takes like 2 weeks to monitor the actual output. What are some resources I could look into for scaling or like the logistics behind to grow like my logistics knowledge?
Sure. I don't want to give too much away, but if we're speaking about, do you want to speak consumer facing or business facing in terms of scaling?
Business.
Sure. I think the way that I would approach it is I would try and win three proof of concept customers and make it the best experience possible for them. I know you said you have tons of demand, but for me, I want to win and I want to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And I'm a product oriented engineer. We're doing product testing all the time on the consumer facing side, but on the business side, you can have POCs that help validate your concept and you can grandfather those customers in and give them free lifetime access or whatever and make them part of a beta experience. And you can learn product market fit from those three people. And if you can get those three people to love your product, I think that scaling comes naturally after that. I know it's not my turn to speak anymore, but that's a really quick answer. And Matt, we could host a Twitter space to talk about just that another time. But Wolf, do you want to take it back from
Yeah, I
me?
want to see if Joe was able to talk. Joe, you left for a second. You came back. Are you able to hear us? Unfortunately, I think this is also the first Twitter space that he tried to speak on. So I'm not hearing Joe. So I'm going to continue to communicate with him. Is anybody else hearing him?
No.
Okay,
No.
cool. All right. So Joe, hopefully you can hear me. DM me if you have any problems or you can figure it out. But we're just going to keep the ball rolling so we have time at the end because there's a bunch more to go through. So good friend of mine, someone who I met on the internet, met on Twitter, and I now talk with every single day. I think we talk, and we've even collaborated on a little bit of entrepreneurship stuff ourselves. So meme investors, you're here, honestly, super entrepreneurial guy. You have like all these different businesses going on. You're creating this account. You're very open to I feel like experimentation within startups. From what I've seen, you'll bring in a new personality. I met you as Blair S. Wealthy, and now you're a meme investor. So a lot of change coming in. You're living on Twitter Spaces, right? Creating like a brand. You're a chief meme officer. So talk to me about like your experiences with entrepreneurship and startups.
Yeah, so I just want to say thanks to Wolf for kind of putting this awesome space together. I know I'm a little, I feel like I'm a little sick. I think I fell asleep on a space last night until about 5:30 PST. So these are kind of getting crazy here. I'm losing my life. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Wolf for this space. But just a little bit of background about myself. Some mild successes and spectacular failures. So, I mean, before I could even really drive or really classified myself as really an entrepreneur, I was selling things on Craigslist, everything from kind of computers to dog doors. I would just walk to my local Starbucks and sell it. I just really enjoyed that. I think it was like a Twitter dopamine hit. The rush I kind of got from negotiating and doing those kind of deals was what really made me happiest back then. That was, I don't know, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, kind of high school. Um, and then kind of moving into freshman slash sophomore year of college, I started reselling a lot of sneakers, getting into that space a lot. My parents' living room was just stacked with shoes. I absolutely love that. I never actually really kept any of those shoes, which is interesting. Like Jordans and then stuff like that. I know people love that, but I don't know. I was just never really into that kind of shoes. But awesome space to be in, and then kind of moved on from there naturally, kind of into ticket reselling, selling everything from kind of Warriors playoff tickets to Metallica tickets, um, and then just kind of going back in 2014 as well. I started to learn for the first time kind of about crypto. Originally, just got into it because of a friend told me about it. Just getting into trade about it, or just getting into that space to trade, and then ultimately just over time getting deeper in the community and learning about the tech. And then in the beginning of kind of 2020, I started my own cryptocurrency exchange. Now, of course, this wasn't my first company, but it was my first startup. And I think that's kind of a key difference that a lot of people get mixed up. It's startup is kind of a whole totally different beast than really a company is. But ultimately, that grew really quickly, and it failed for a number of different reasons. But I learned a lot from it and quickly kind of got back up. And then today I have a clothing company at RetroSend that kind of focuses on high quality finance apparel, and I'm working now on another kind of a small venture as well that'll hopefully launch soon. And then I also uh, consult kind of influencers and companies in the crypto space to kind of grow quickly as possible at the cheapest cost. And just off my background, some of the things I've learned from the past businesses I've started and now kind of putting into action today. Um, I've experienced a lot of failures. It really sucks. They're tough. You're embarrassed. You're tired, but you just have to keep going. And it really brings me to my next point, which is, I mean, all it takes is one. And what I mean by that is, one person, one retweet, one investment, one thing can really change everything. So just keep going. And on top of that as well, my motto really is kind of growth over everything. And this applies to a lot of things, not only to a startup, but with yourself as well. And so you have to constantly be failing forward, making mistakes, moving on. And during all this, you need to be learning from all that. And I think too many people kind of bank on going viral off their first tweet or first TikTok, whatever it is. And when that doesn't, they most likely give up. But really, I think you should optimize more for the long term virality. So if you continue to chomp away at the bit, you continue to improve your videos or your tweets, whatever it is, I think you'll eventually see that growth that you wanted in the beginning. Um, and that's kind of you can see that in an example of just this Twitter account. I started I think 3 or 4 months ago, and really I really wanted to grow this as quickly as possible. And at the beginning, I got blocked by a bunch of other kind of FinTwit personalities, but I've improved upon that and continued to kind of evolve, and I'm going to continue to evolve as well. And so I just wanted to close with and emphasize that you want to stay eager. Again, all it takes is one thing, one person, and never stop growing. And then thank you again, kind of everyone being in here. I love these kind of spaces, loves Twitter spaces overall. And if anyone have any kind of questions about uh, how they're thinking about growing, uh, or for their startup or whatever it is in themselves, whatever, just DM me and I can answer any questions or kind of give you some feedback on what I think might work best. So again, thank you to Wolf and all the other speakers. Love what you guys are doing.
Powerful points, man. Very true with that. You just need one person to kind of can come in and make or break everything. Could even be, one person that's working for you also, right? One person comes onto your team and they revolutionize it. They can take your idea and make it a reality.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely recommend everyone check out. Also, congrats on 20K. Big push, big push.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been pushing together since low thousands.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. It's been moving.
The grind.
Yeah, 100%. And if anybody likes to have like, I think one of the best things on here to follow is people who I personally like to follow people who put out a lot of content. I think you get a lot of content out of meme investors. So appreciate that. All right, Joe Liziness, you're back on here. Are you able to speak?
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, sir. We can hear you. Perfect.
Man, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a Google Pixel or what, man. I don't know. It's been a while, little one. I appreciate it. So yeah, we'll get started here. So most people aren't aware of it, but regulation crowdfund, right, absolutely changed the game of wealth creation and funding startups. So a lot of people are still new to it. That you can seek, startup investments with just $100. You can go on these equity crowdfunding portals, the WeFunders, Start Engines, the Republics, and raise equity for your company. I've led rounds on WeFund, one of them being Toffee.com. Absolutely love the startup community. And I think that, going in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to continue to see hyper growth within this space. The days of having to be a millionaire VC or angel living in Silicon Valley or begging these millionaire VCs for money for your startup, they're essentially over. So when we see places like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and they kind of literally kickstarted that offering, hey, I have an idea, I want to fund this, but how could you do it? So now you're raising money for a company, or just going out there like, hey, I want to make money. I don't want to chase memes. I don't want to chase hype. You can allocate $100. You can see, what was it, Coinbase? They went public about 2 months ago now. One of the earliest VCs invested $300,000. Okay, well, all right, the purpose of the $100, but they made 5,000x on their money exiting their position in Coinbase. 5,000x. And frequently when I wrote my book and I spoke about seed investing and getting in on the next Facebook, the next Twitter, the next Snapchat, anything in the $5 to $20 million range, long before they go public.
Joe cut out for me. Can anybody else still hear him?
Lost them.
No, I cut out too.
All right. Maybe it is the Pixel. I feel like he's going to cut back in any second, but his sound was kind of going in and out for me. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, Joe is disconnecting. So I'm going to keep the ball rolling here. I just want to let everyone know that if you want to hear from more from Joe, he actually really has a ton to share, some really good points. I did a podcast with him. You can check that out via my pinned tweet. It's investing in startups with Joe Liziness, and he's helped a lot of startups get off the ground. He invested a bunch. He's a really big advocate for companies that he works with, which is why I thought he was the perfect person to be on here. Unfortunately, it is how Spaces is. It's a deep dark world out here. So I am going to keep things moving. I'm very excited that we have David Bell here. David, this is one of our first interactions, but you are, I think, in addition to working at TradingView, you also are a bit entrepreneurial yourself, I believe, from what I heard from Steph. So I'd love to kind of hear some more about your story and, just be able to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely, mate. Thanks so much for having me on. My name's David Bell. I'm the growth director of TradingView UK. I'm a trader. Somehow, no idea how I've fallen into this crazy world of financial markets. And I also run a research firm, which I kind of like to describe the tone of being as if you're down the pub or at a bar with your mates and you've had 2 or 3 drinks, whereby you can still talk about a topic, but it's going to be kind of laughy, jokey, while still maintaining quite a high brow level, mainly because I'm too stupid to perfectly speak in this kind of really high level way. So I like to explain it to people in a way that I find I can understand. Now, I think the last year in financial markets has been pretty crazy, as we can all kind of attest to. And I want to start here because I think trading is possibly one of the most entrepreneurial things that you can do. And the problem is that people do tend to just jump into it without thinking of it as a business. I will get onto TradingView in a second, um, but I just wanted to start here because, you know, the barriers of entry to trading these days are so bloody low. I mean, we all know about Robinhood, for example, how they kind of gamify the trading experience, and you know, people are jumping into it without understanding the same parallels between running a business and trading. So I just wanted to make that point totally clear. I think that a lot of people are potentially going to get burnt or have been because they don't understand this one very simple aspect. Um, in terms of TradingView as a startup, I would say that we're probably past that stage now of those initial periods. But one of the things that I noted at TradingView, which is why it's such a successful product, is that they purely focused on the product. Okay. There's been times where I've thought, why don't you just become a brokerage? You know, why don't you just start accepting flow? And it's because the guys are solely devoted to making such a good product for their audience. And I think that's probably a massive key takeaway, is that if you're totally audience or community focused, then you know you're naturally going to reap the rewards of that, because you're putting something out there that everyone is just dying for. You know, I would say that, well, for example, TradingView is now the 65th largest website in the world according to Alexa. That's pretty crazy for just a site that essentially shows people financial data. I mean, it's fantastic. The platform is unbelievable. You can access pretty much any asset you want in the world, loads of different economic indicators, financials. But I think the true power of what they've done at TradingView is they've made it essential to people's lives who are involved in the financial markets. If you want to get a Bloomberg subscription, it's 24K a year. If you want to get Reuters, it can go from 12K to 18K. But TradingView is about 550 quid a year, sorry. And so making things accessible to the masses like that, and constantly taking feedback from the audience to try and improve the product all the time, is just so essential, I think. And that's one thing that, as I've said, they are purely focused on it. Coming off that, I think people have mentioned things to do with making sure you're visible online as well, and that is one thing that TradingView has done. Our charts are absolutely everywhere, all over the web, and this is one of the main reasons as to why we've grown so quickly. Alongside that, it's also been spotting the crypto trend and making sure that we have all the crypto data on there. Okay, but kind of tangential to that as well is, I would say, where I really excel is by making connections face to face. You know, asking for referrals, asking for introductions if I don't have access to a certain person. I think the amount of email messages that we get, the amount of DMs we get, the amount of phone calls we might get these days, people are just much less sort of sensitive to actually wanting to respond. So I think that when you are in a startup situation, trying to gain access to certain people for a conversation takes a network. Okay, it takes being able to just go out there, put yourself about, have a laugh, and to provide value as well. Because if you're just asking to kind of have something, then you're never going to really get. I could talk for hours on this, but I recognize that I've only got 7 minutes, so apologies if it sounds a bit disjointed. In the FX and CFD world here in London, I've made sure that I would have the ability to ask one of my contacts if they know XYZ person to set up a meeting or to set up a call, because going in cold in these things, I just find it much less receptive these days. Do you have any questions that I could expand on? Because I'm kind of freestyling a little bit here, Wolf.
Yeah, no, I've appreciated that. I would love to hear more about, your ventures. So obviously when people go into your profile, they see macrodisiac.com. There's a bunch of stuff going on there. It says level up your market IQ, right? You're writing a letter, you have members. Can you go into a little bit about that too?
Yeah, sure. So I started that with about 100 quid because when I was broking, I was putting ideas out on LinkedIn pretty much every day. And then I noted that, people were extremely receptive. And a couple of people mentioned to me that really just you should charge for it. And, why not? I started it from there, almost as like a little hobby that could earn some money, and now it's really turned into a fully fledged business with sponsors and decent monthly recurring revenue. I'm very devoted to it because it's my little baby, and we're really looking to expand. And we do have an investor on board that should be coming to fruition in the next couple of months to really make it into a broader media company. Because I feel like most of the financial content that's out there is just quite boring, and people they just don't seem to really want to put an edge on anything. They don't want to put the odd fuck in there or the odd shit in there. Do you know what I mean? And it's not that it's necessary. It's just that people tend to warm to you if you're more casual with things. If you get rid of that corporate speak, if you really open yourself up and make yourself accountable as well, by being yourself. I think that's really, really vital. But yeah, it's going really well. And off of that, what we've done more recently is we've looked at different types of revenue streams as well. So more fixed revenue versus just the monthly recurring, because that can get quite costly to market and whatnot. Although we don't really spend that much on marketing, to be fair. And as a trader, I think of things in terms of risk management. So me personally, doing three things at once, especially when trading, it enables me to be less anxious when I'm doing that high risk, activity of trading. So that's purely why I do it. And they all complement each other as well. So if I'm doing something for TradingView in some way, that will help, my trading and also Macrodisiac. If I'm doing something for Macrodisiac, vice versa with the other two. So I think, I'm always looking somehow to kind of dampen that left tail risk. That's what I always like to say, because I understand that, life's never certain. And so if you are an entrepreneur, I think that you want to try and limit your risk as much as possible. And whether that comes through being really, really precise with your choices or kind of diversifying a little bit to make sure that you've got income coming in. I think that's of vital importance.
So one other question, and then I'm going to kind of give a little bit of my story, and then I know Tyler has some questions that we'll dive into, and that is, David, you're the head of growth, and strategies for growth and marketing have really significantly changed over the last 5 years. And TradingView has been around for 10 years at this point. I'm not sure exactly when you came onto them, but can you talk about what the shift has gone towards and what some of the most effective growth strategies are for companies that are getting started now?
Okay, so I would say that I'm not sure if TradingView would be the best comparison now, purely because everyone knows about us. Okay, so I did work for TradingView back in 2016 as well. And one thing that has led to massive growth at TradingView is the crypto trend. Okay, they were very, very quick to jump on it. And this must have been back in 2014, 2015. I think they were displaying Bitcoin data, for example. They were very, very quick to get onto it and to essentially become the one-stop shop whereby all crypto traders go to TradingView, or TradingView charts are on places like Binance, on FTX. All of these different massive exchanges have we've got the exposure on them. So jumping onto that trend was essential, and I think that feeds through because crypto traders are also going to be FX traders a lot of the time. They're dealing in equities. They're going to be maybe trading bonds. So it really becomes essential. I think the product is essential for a lot of people. I think we've got one of the highest average session times in the world as well, purely because, you know, obviously trading is an activity where you have to be in front of the computer quite a lot. But that whole kind of concept of being essential to someone's life is just unbelievable. And I see it, you know, when I'm chatting to CEOs of brokers, you can see the excitement on their faces when you're speaking to them about the product and, you know, the metrics and all of this stuff, these different things. It's an easy sell, let's put it that way, because it's such a good product.
Got it. Awesome. So, David, I appreciate you outlining, you know, a couple things you're working on in addition to your job. Obviously, you know, like you said, TradingView is known by everybody. 63rd, I think you said, most well-known company in the world. So I guess that's most traffic site, probably.
Yeah, 65th on Alexa.
65th on Alexa. On Alexa. I've never heard that before. That's a fun metric to use. So I'm going to give a little bit about Wolf real quick. I don't talk a ton about Wolf usually on Spaces, but figured it was a bit fitting for this space since we are a startup. And then I'm going to turn back to Tyler, maybe with some questions for people. And that is just an explanation of who I am and what Wolf is. My name is Gav Blacksburg, and I am the COO and the voice of Wolf Financial. And by voice, I have taken over essentially all marketing, branding, and external facing obligations. It was a need within the company, and I ended up fulfilling it. My background is in finance. I have a bachelor's of finance from Drexel University. I worked for about 6 months at Goldman Sachs in private wealth management, and I also worked for about 6 months at a private equity firm doing portfolio management for them. And now I'm at Wolf. I took this leap about 15 months ago now, right at the beginning of the pandemic, when I was approached by a couple of friends who had this idea that, you know, we should be, the original idea was democratizing the ability to do financial research and making that a little bit easier, but it really blossomed when I became really a Twitter addict, and along with some other friends of mine, I'm sure people can relate to this. And the problem that I was finding was, you know, there's millions of people on here, but every time you see something good, you have to leave the platform. And what do I mean by that? It's like somebody tags a ticker, and then they say, this ticker had 150% year over year free cash flow growth, and they had X metric and X metric. And you're like, wow, that looks great. I'm now going to leave Twitter to go look at that somewhere else, right? So the platform itself isn't built for finance. And this goes for all major social medias, whether you're looking at TikTok, which has a massive financial community, Instagram, which has been blossoming more, Facebook for the boomers, you know, whatever it is, people, they come there, they hear about something, and then they leave. And our idea was, what if we can build the platform that people don't have to leave? We make the social media that people, with the aspects that they love. So on Wolf, you can find both the traditional style of Twitter, where you have kind of like the posting and the comments and the retweets and the threads. In addition to that, you also have the TikTok style videos. So instead of stories, we have those 60-second videos appearing at the top with that scrolling ability. And then all of the financial research that you want is also in the platform. So the idea is, I see something that I love, a stock ticker, someone tags, I don't know, Futu. That's one that I really like. When I click onto that in Wolf, I'm taken to a split screen. And at the bottom, I get everybody that's talking about it. The algorithm just aggregates people that are saying X, X, and X about Futu. But up top, immediately I'm given data, which is, what is the stock trading at? What's the one-day price change? And then when they scroll down, we built in an entire fundamental and technical analysis research center. And the idea here was, for most new traders, they're not going to go read a 10K. And in fact, even going on Yahoo Finance can sometimes be hard for them. So they'll go onto Yahoo Finance, right, and they'll look, and it's just a bunch of numbers, and it's a bunch of ratios, and it doesn't mean anything. So the idea for us was, let's turn everything into pictures and graphs. And then the kind of the moment of bliss was when we realized we could blend these two things. So as I do my research on Wolf, it becomes content. I can take everything, slide it right into my social feed. And now we've come really into later stages. Right now in our seed funding, hopefully closing very, very soon. You know, the team has blossomed, 14 people. And my role specifically has kind of been all over the place. Like I said, I am COO, and I do a lot of internal operation work. But in addition, my life has become external branding. I started this Wolf account in September really with just the idea that I wanted to have a personal account that would be following finance people, because my other Twitter was all sports. And I found a couple people that kind of brought me into it. It was actually like the Morning Brew account, Gannon Breslin, Ramp Capital. And I started following them and just realizing that these people were really being more like personalities than brands. And as I became more responsible for growth, I realized that we were definitely going to be going down this content creator influencer route. And nobody wanted to be friends with a brand. They wanted to be friends with a personality. And so I just made the account my personality. And while it is a company account and we have a product, and I just filed for hopefully get verified by Twitter under that brand name, which would be awesome. This is, it's my personality, and that's the way that I kind of run it. There's a couple of the people who have access to the account, but I'm pretty greedy with it, tweeting a lot, doing all my stuff on my time. And it's been really awesome. It's not what I ever saw myself doing. I thought I was going to be sitting behind a desk at like an investment banking firm doing spreadsheets, maybe private wealth management, doing some type of sales stuff. But I see those all items kind of carrying into this world. The startup's been honestly one of the biggest learning experiences of my life. I've learned so much. I do most of our legal work I've done, so like writing terms and conditions, all of our hiring. I've actually been interviewing interns all week and just so many different areas. So my favorite part of it though is the connections. I've connected with and I've done over 2,000 Zoom meetings in the last 15 months. Honestly, I'm clocking 30 to 50 a week usually. So it's just been an amazing experience. And people that, I started a podcast for Wolf. And then once I got into these spaces, I kind of got the beta access early. That really changed the game for me and just allowed me to reach out because, I post a lot of questions on my page. And Meme Investors knows this. So I posted one the other day where I said, what are something that you are abnormally good at? Or like, what's your like specialty? And people were posting and commenting. And then Meme said, all right, well, like, Gav, what's yours? And for me, it's give me 7 minutes on a Zoom call and I'll make anybody my friend. Like, that's what I love to do is just get in here. So this is another way where I never like to write, but Twitter, it just seems more flowing, more fresh, more free. And I just love connecting with people. So that's the gist of me. That's what I'm doing. I hope Wolf becomes the next great social media. I hope we low key just dominate FinTwit. I think that we have the potential for it. So we'll kind of see where the fun goes. But, I'm going to be here for a while. So that's my take. Tyler, throwing over to you.
I got some questions for you, Wolf, to start, and I have questions for David and Meme Investors as well. But Wolf, tell us more about the DNA of what Wolf is or Wolf Financial is doing right now. What's your user base look like? What's your growth look like? What are the next milestones you guys are trying to hit?
Absolutely. So right now, we have been focused on building out our core functionality within the platform. And the three main things we're working on is making sure that our research center is top notch, that everything that you're getting in there. So we're actually upgrading our data set shortly because we noticed some discrepancies with what we have. So getting in, it took us 6 months to build out our current research center. So that's something that's been really tough. We're actually have 2 developers moving full-time from part-time next week. So that's one thing. The number 2 is we're actually going to allow people to sell premium content inside the platform. So that's another core functionality. So right now, you're on Twitter, you have a huge audience. Well, you have to move them somewhere else, right? You have to move them to Patreon, to Substack. We don't want that to happen. We want people to be able to sell their content right in the platform. And then number 3 is going to be an explore page. So we've actually built out the initial of it, but the goal is to have a really great way to find people in the app. So find content that you're not already following that you want to be following. So the DNA of the company is social finance. It is you want to have a community of people that are going to help you become, the best investor possible. They're going to lead you to the correct decisions. User base is pretty new. Like I said, we're sitting at around 3,000 users right now. But that's with $0 marketing spend. It's just me chatting on Twitter and bringing people in. But we do have relationships with about 60 different content creators with cumulative audiences around 8 million right now. And I can't wait to get some funding so I can start designing contracts with them and monetarily incentivizing them to bring over their user bases and help them build audiences.
Awesome. My last question, we could talk for hours, obviously, but I'm really curious. You guys are going to market with a raise right now. What does that look like? And I think, on the topic of startups and entrepreneurship, fundraising is a key topic. Tell us about Wolf's fundraising plans and when you're going to market with your raise and what you're looking for, and if you're raising debt or equity and how that works.
It's a great question. I'm not going to go super far down the rabbit hole just because my CFO is not in the room, and I mostly have those conversations when he's there. But with what we were doing, so we originally were looking at perhaps just skipping pre-seed funding altogether, moving right into a pretty large seed raise. I don't want to give specific numbers right now, but somewhere in the few $1 million range. And however, we debated with that back and forth for a while. But what we decided that we're actually going to do is we're going to raise a convertible note, and we're going to do a much smaller amount, probably around a tenth of what we were going to do. And we're going to do a kind of like a prove it round. We're going to take that money. We're going to get, a couple more developers full time. We're going to, over the course of 3 months, build out core functionality, establish that we can make the app. We're going to aim for around 50,000 users on that user base within that convertible note. And then we're going to roll that into hopefully an even higher, valuation than we would have got if we just went right to seed funding. We're pretty comfortable with it. It's kind of a trade-off, right? Go for that bigger money amount or take this smaller, prove it. But we really like what we have. We're pretty far in. We've bootstrapped for 15 months. We feel like we can do a smaller round, just to sustain our employees, our processes, our data, and just move really fast after that.
I love it. Well, if we'll do this again, and maybe we just do the whole session on what you're doing, because I have millions of questions. I want to transition to meme investors. I had no idea you've done like every business under the sun and the moon. When you have an idea, how do you take that idea and say, I'm going to run with this? What goes through your mind when you're like, okay, this is something that has legs?
Yeah, so one of the first things I do is that I really focus on really what's the problem. I think that's really key. I think too many people focus too much on the solution first before what the actual problem is. So before I go into anything, also along with the problem is how can I get started under the smallest niche possible and then deliberately expand. So I know a lot of people really like to focus as broadly as possible, and that was one of the reasons that actually I feel like my my first startup really failed, was because I tried to go way too broad and do too many things at once. And I think uh, so really the answer to your question is what's the problem, and then really what's the focus niche that you're going to start with and try and dominate first, and then deliberately expand into either other products or other markets.
Got it. I want to dive into something. I think one of the most important things about startups is learning from your failures. You said you worked through a startup that didn't work out. What were some of the learnings that you had? And if you want to give us like the spark notes on what that business was, it would be great to understand the failures, because everyone in this room who wants to either be an entrepreneur or wants to start their own thing, giving that knowledge to people will help pave the way for their future successes. So we'd love to hear about some of the learnings you had there.
Yeah, so so yeah, I would say my most recent failure, which was the startup, which was just at the start of, I started kind of working on it with two to three other people in the beginning of 2020, so before pre-COVID, and then launched actually probably about a month or two after COVID. But I think ultimately, I think COVID actually helped the company or kind of growth anyways. But what I would say was one of the main failures that I kind of attribute the company failing to is we tried to focus way too broadly, and we tried to build too many products at once. And if I can put it in the best way I can kind of put it into analogous form is basically we tried to build Google search and Google Docs and just Google Sheets and everything at once, and you just can't do that with three people. And that's just the naivete of someone that's kind of still in college / just about to graduate, thinking that you can kind of do more than you really can. So just kind of going back to your previous question, which is really just finding the problem and then focusing more niche, and then trying to serve the customers in that niche first before you try to build out your Google Docs and Google Sheets, even though obviously Google.
Totally. I want to ask David some questions too, and maybe if there's time, we can continue, because I want to learn more from you meme investors. But David, it's a really nice transition. We've talked about failing startups. We talked a little bit about Wolf and what he's doing trying to build a startup. TradingView right now is in a much larger place, obviously. You're the director of growth there. What does your day-to-day look like in terms of taking something that's already has a foundation and continuing to build upon it?
I would say that the day-to-day is literally reaching out to, as I mentioned, the contacts that I know, and finding out whether it's the right time for them to go with us. Because literally everyone either really wants to be on TradingView, or but it's either it's slightly too costly at the moment for them, or it's just not the right time. So it's really about trying to kind of prod and poke and see at which point in the future they will join us. I think since 2019 we first brought on Oanda, and since then we've added, I think, over 20 more brokers and crypto exchanges. So there's only one trajectory here in terms of that B2B side of business. In terms of the user growth, it just comes down to getting the technology, the user interface, the widgets out all over the web. It's a relatively simple but massively scalable strategy that we've got at TradingView, and it works. The proof is in the pudding. We are featured on pretty much every major financial website. So it's a formula purely of just, as I said before, prodding. What is the right time for you to take us on?
Got it. What are some of the more out there things that you've done to win someone over? Do you have any creative techniques, some scrappy things? It sounds like you're sitting pretty right now and you can kind of just wait until it's the right time for someone else. But have you done anything that can be applied to this kind of scrappy startup mentality where you might not have that brand recognition, where you've closed someone where you had to do something different to make it happen?
Go for beers. Honestly, I mean, in the finance sector, going for drinks, going for a meal, is pretty common. Make the person become your friend, and also, if you are talking to a CEO, I mean, I'm only 28, but if you are talking to a CEO, they're normal people. I don't necessarily have any nerves when I'm speaking to people that others might deem to be a higher authority. A lot of that is because of the product, but also a lot of it's because of me. So I try to become their friend rather than pitch, and it tends to work quite well.
I love it. Well, I think we're just out of time, Wolf. I don't know if you have any closing remarks, or this was awesome, though.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you, Tyler, for asking questions, for being inquisitive. I'd love to, have another personal chat with you, obviously. Thank you to the listeners. I know it's the middle of the day, the work day for so many people. So appreciate you all tuning in. And we're definitely going to run this back. This was a great group. I think startups and entrepreneurship and growth and learning about companies is something that everybody's fascinated by nowadays more than ever. And I just want to keep doing this. So, like I said, this is pretty much my full-time job, putting these stuff together, producing content, running the Twitter. So it's a stacked week this week. I had like 6 spaces. I've got another one tonight at 6:30, another one tomorrow at 5 p.m. Already planned one for Monday night and Tuesday next week. So just going to keep them rolling. So Tyler, we'll be in contact and we'll keep making these happen.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. This is great. Shout out Jordan and Bobby who are listening to, my buddies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
100%. Thank you, Wolf.
Yeah, of course. Thanks to my speakers. All right. Take care, everybody.